All right. Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday morning. If you are seeing this, I appreciate the views. We are going to do our quick Sunday football picks, hit a few topics that were in the news the last few days. I kind of slacked off on making this video. I had a CrossFit competition yesterday, and my team was able to pull out the win in our intermediate division. So I am fairly sore, but very happy to pull out a W. Um, if you remember, I had the Jaguars picked to win over the Saints, provided that Trevor Lawrence played. He did, and Jacksonville pulled out the win. So, real quick, game picks for Sunday. We have Indianapolis and Cleveland with Minshew playing. It appears Deshaun Watson will make his return. Regardless of whether he was playing or not, I think Cleveland's defense is too good for Indianapolis, so I had Cleveland picked either way. We have New England and Buffalo playing. Buffalo has owned this series ever since Tom Brady has left the division, and I think that trend will continue, and Buffalo will win. We have the Giants and the Washington Commanders. Reports are that Daniel Jones could play. Saquon Barkley is back, but I kind of think Washington's going to win this one. I think they've been playing a little bit better. If Daniel Jones does play, it's kind of concerning on this pick because I do think they're a slightly better team with Daniel Jones playing, but what percentage is he going to be at? Is he going to be at 75, 80, 90 with that neck injury? Don't really know. And Washington has played fairly good in several games this year, so I'm leaning towards Washington on this one. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens hosting the Detroit Lions. This game is going to be one of the better games of the week, I think. It's two very good teams. I believe Baltimore's 4-2, Detroit is 5-1. And I know Baltimore is at home and they're favored by 3, but I'm leaning towards Detroit on this one. I think Detroit pulls the upset. They've played very good on both sides of the ball. Last week their running game wasn't there, and Jared Goff played very, very well. I believe 350 yards, 2 touchdowns, like super efficient on offense. He didn't turn the ball over. And Detroit's defense has played really good in a lot of games this year. So I'm taking Detroit in this one. We have the Raiders and the Bears. And Justin Fields is not playing. He dislocated his thumb last week. And the Raiders have been playing better. And I think they're going to get Devontae Adams more involved after his comments, which we're going to review those and my take on those in a minute. But I got the Raiders winning that. We have Tampa Bay and Atlanta. I believe Tampa's coming off of a bye week. No, they're not, actually. They got beat by Detroit last week. But Atlanta threw 3 interceptions last week. Ritter has not played well in the last couple weeks. I think they probably could turn that somewhat around this week, but I think Tampa Bay's the better team. I think they're probably the better coached team, and because of that, I'm taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We have the LA Rams and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh, their offense has not been good. You're hearing Fire Canada chants break out at every Pittsburgh game. You're hearing it at Pittsburgh hockey games. And it's really quite funny that it's happening. Like it started happening on the Pat McAfee show. They were on the set of NFL Game Day on Friday, the day before or College Game Day. My bad, not NFL. College Game Day. They were on the set of it Friday in Ohio, which I believe AJ Hawk said is 2.5 hour drive or so to Pittsburgh. Fire Canada chants started breaking out in Ohio. So it's really funny that that's starting to happen a lot. And this also goes back to the point that I've used Pittsburgh for this multiple times. I've said it multiple times. Preseason means absolutely nothing because Pittsburgh's offense in preseason looked unstoppable. Their starters played 5 drives, marched down the field, scored 5 touchdowns, looked great, looked efficient, and lo and behold, regular season started, and their offense has only looked halfway decent in one game this year. So, all that being said, I know the Rams running back is injured, probably not going to play. Actually, I believe he's not playing. But regardless of that, Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka, their secondary is very good. As long as they can protect Stafford against T.J. Watt, I do not think the Pittsburgh Steelers have much of a chance in this game. So I'm taking the LA Rams. Next, we have the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. DK Metcalf, who I'd commented about his unnecessary penalties. He is a game-time decision with rib and hip injuries. But regardless, I think Seattle's the better team. Arizona is still not that good of a team. They still have their issues all over the field. So I got Seattle winning that. Green Bay and Denver. This is the game I am most invested in, obviously, being a Green Bay fan. Green Bay is favored by 1. It is on the road in Denver. And Green Bay's coming off a bye, so they've had a week to rest. They had a week off. They've had extra time to prepare. But at the same time, Denver played the Thursday game last week, so they've had almost as much time to prepare as Green Bay has, and they've had almost as much rest. So I want to pick Green Bay in this game coming out of the bye. I want to trust that Matt LaFleur made some changes to the offense in the bye week. I want to trust that he has been in Joe Barry's office and, forcing some changes on defense, because the defense has not been good and they haven't changed things. And so I want to believe that stuff like that happened during the bye week, but I'm not there right now with them. After seeing how the season's been going and what's been going on a week-to-week basis, I don't trust them at this point in time. And that's not to say I don't want it to happen. That's not to say that I'm not going to be cheering for them to win or any of that. I'm just not there. I'm not a believer that it's happened yet. And another thing that bothers me, or that makes it hard to pick Green Bay in this game, is the fact that Denver's defense played relatively well against Kansas City, that Thursday night game. They held Kansas City only 1 touchdown, and then I think 4 field goals to win 19-8. Now, Denver's offense was not good, but again, Green Bay's defense has not played good. Their pass defense looks good on paper, but it's because everybody's running the ball down their throat and controlling the clock, and they're not having a throw. So I think secondary-wise, we match up very good against Denver. And Aaron Jones is going to play, so our running game could get back in the mix of things. But I don't trust LaFleur's play calling, because he hasn't done a good job getting the offense in a rhythm early, getting Jordan Love in a rhythm early, and getting him comfortable in games. And the offense has struggled way too much and has been too inconsistent. And again, I've already mentioned the defensive issues. I think Aaron Jones being back will help get some consistency on offense, but I just don't have a lot of trust in what's going on in Green Bay at this point in time. So even though they are favored by 1, I am taking Denver. The next game is the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Chargers. Chargers coming off a rough game Monday night against Dallas, but it's in Kansas City. Kansas City is on the division, and I don't see that changing. I think Kansas City wins this game, although I do think the Chargers will play them close. The Sunday night game is the Miami Dolphins and Philadelphia Eagles. Early on, with the way the Eagles have played the last few weeks, I was kind of leaning towards Miami on this game, but Philly lost last week, and that made me lean towards Philly, because I think Mike McDaniels made a comment last year, and I forget exactly what it was, but they were on like a 2 or 3 game losing streak, and he was saying that you can be winning and not. Breaking it down, it says, essentially you could be winning and covering up problems, and because you're winning, you're not fixing things, and you could actually be getting worse even though you're winning, and then you could be losing games but steadily getting better in the process. And I believe that's kind of what was going on with Philly. Like, they had their issues, but they were still winning. And yeah, there might have been an emphasis on fixing them, but they were still winning. So there wasn't a huge need to fix them. And now they finally lost. And I think what they need to do is get back to their run game. There are 2 or 3 games where they were racking up 200 plus rush yards, not necessarily throwing the ball or pushing it downfield, and not trying to feed it to A.J. Brown, and they were just straight up dominating teams. And that's how Philly is built. They're built to dominate teams at the line of scrimmage and control the ball. And you put Jalen Hurts in much fewer situations where he can make a mistake. And with Miami, with their high-powered offense, their speed, you've got to keep them off the field. You need to keep Miami's defense on the field and keep your defense rested so that whenever they are on the field, they can try to match them as much as they can. And hopefully, I believe Jalen Carter's playing again. And if that's the case, I think they'll get some pressure on Tua, which they will definitely need to do. But I think Philly probably took a look in the mirror after that loss and made some changes, and I think they will play. I mean, they are hosting the Dolphins, so it's a home game. Their field, they did the throwback logo at the 50-yard line and the throwback cursive in the end zones. It looks so good. And I'm not a Philly fan, but that logo on the field, I saw a video of it on TikTok. It looked really, really good. And I don't think that's going to have an effect on the game. I'm just saying it looked really good. But like I said, I think Philly will make some changes, and hopefully the loss helped them take a good look in the mirror and realize, like, hey, we've been trying to do some things that weren't working. We need to go back to what was working, and we need to get these W's. So I got Philly on that. And the Monday night game, it appears that Christian McCaffrey is trending towards playing. But even without him, I think Brock Purdy has played very well. I think he's a very good quarterback. I think San Francisco is a very good team, and they're playing the Vikings without their best player in Justin Jefferson, and their running game has not been good. I think San Francisco will dominate them at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, something that they are built to do, and it's also Kirk Cousins in primetime. I know he has not necessarily played bad in primetime, but he rarely wins in primetime, and I say primetime, it's more Monday Night Football. He's only won like 2 Monday Night Football games in his career. And without Justin Jefferson, I just don't think they're going to have anything to match up well against San Francisco. Even if McCaffrey doesn't play, I still got San Francisco winning that game. So those are our 13 games this week. We have 6 teams on a bye. Those teams are Dallas, Carolina, Cincinnati, New York Jets, Tennessee, and Houston. So if you have any of those players on your fantasy teams, it's a bit of a rough week with 6 teams being on a bye. Some weeks we have 2, some weeks we have 4, and then obviously 6. A few hot topics. I'd mentioned Devontae Adams' comments about what he had said about the Raiders. So he's clarified it, and I think some other people have clarified it and put it a little bit more into perspective what he was saying. And basically he's saying that the offense is not playing to its best, and if it's going to be its best and it's going to be great, he needs to be more involved. Had he have just come out and said that in the right way, I would not have had a problem with what he said. But the main issue as to what I took issue with was the fact that he said, I don't measure this based on wins and losses. I measure it on greatness. And ultimately, wins and losses are what matters more than anything. You don't have to be playing great to win games. And I know, like I just said about Philly, you can be playing bad and winning and covering things up. I think he's trying to put an emphasis on that yes, we're winning, but we're not playing great, and we do need to fix things. And having him more involved could potentially do that. He's a very great player. But had he have said it the right way, I would have much less issue with what he said. And I say that I would still have somewhat of an issue with it because you may not be getting targets, but you're still involved. Like you are, whether you may be a distraction, you may force the defense to double cover you, and that may open Jacoby Myers up all game long. And if that's the case, if he's consistently beating his guy, then that's great. Let him do it. It doesn't have to be you making the difference. It doesn't have to be you with the ball in your hand to win games. So if your role is to be that distraction, then be that way, because ultimately winning the game is what matters, and it doesn't matter what your production is in the process. Winning is what matters. So I'll somewhatly take back what I said about what he said, but again, I do still have somewhat of an issue with it. Not taking back what I said about Parsons and his comments. I'm not taking back what I said about Metcalf and his unnecessary penalties. Metcalf. In my last video, I'd said I may cover the tush push, so I'm going to hit that real quick. Earlier on in the season, I'd kind of said that it was a play that I felt like they should take out or change the rule on, and after I've done some research, looked into it, I've definitely changed my mind on that. And I say that because it's not a play that is a guarantee unless you are the Philadelphia Eagles. And even then, it's not necessarily a guarantee, but it's a very high probability. So I've seen some stats where they've converted more 4th and shorts or 3rd and shorts than any other team in the league by far. But other teams, I want to say, I didn't look up the number of the times it's failed, but we know Dallas failed doing it on Monday Night Football. The Buffalo Bills have failed several times. Like, a lot of teams have failed at trying the quarterback sneak in last season and this season. It's getting a lot of attention because Philly is doing it all the time, and they're very successful at it. And they are built to be successful at that. And Troy Aikman, was it Troy Aikman? No, it was J.J. Watt. I'm sorry. No. J.J. Watt said you could change the rule to where the running backs can't push, and the Eagles would still be the most successful team at the quarterback sneak. And it's because they know how to do it. They have the offensive line that is built for it. And the key to the tush push or the quarterback sneak is you have to get down lower than the opposing team. You have to get lower, and you have to take their legs out, which stops their push, and then your quarterback is able to somewhat push over the top of them. So if their offensive line gets that penetration into the defensive line and stops their push and causes them to fall down, causes linebackers to pile up on top of them, your quarterback's going to be successful on a sneak. And the push of the running back, yeah, it does give a little bit of advantage, but Jalen Hurts is a very strong quarterback. Like, he has some very strong legs. It's been noted when they had him on New Heights that, in the weight room, he'd be squatting as much as Jason Kelce, and Jason Kelce is his center, so he's very, very strong. So I think they would be just as successful on the sneaks without the rule of being able to do the tush push, or the brotherly shove as they like to call it. And I don't think injuries are an issue here, because you're not seeing anybody getting injured on these. I don't think the risk of injury is any higher than a regular quarterback sneak, so I don't think that's a reason to ban it. And I don't think it's such a guarantee. Like, if every team in the league was doing it and had an 80+% chance of success rate, then yeah, you could say, okay, it creates an unfair advantage for the offense. But Philly is the only team that's having that kind of success with it. Other teams are not. So Philly's just built to be successful at it. And because of that, I don't think it needs to be changed. So I have kind of changed my stance on the brotherly shove. Another topic is, it has been talked about the pace that Tyreek Hill is on. He is on pace for over 2,300 yards this season. I think he is tied or has the league in touchdowns. And I think he is on pace for 17, 18 touchdown range. and 2,300 yards. So people have talked about he could be the MVP, and I do not think that is the case. I think he is definitely on pace to give McCaffrey a run for his money for Offensive Player of the Year, but the only non-quarterback in the league right now that I think has a case for MVP is Christian McCaffrey. Now, I do think Hill could change that, but say he plays the rest of the season, every game, and he gets 2,200 yards, 16 touchdowns. Or say he stays on his current pace and gets 17 touchdowns and 2,300 yards. I don't think he'll get MVP. I think that will simply propel Tua to get MVP. MVP's been a quarterback award. I don't see that changing. Now, in order for Hill to get MVP, if he were to play every game and he were to explode with 2,600 yards, like an unprecedented amount of yards, and 21, 22 touchdowns, yeah, I think at that point you could say he's probably MVP just due to the greatness of the stats. But I don't think that is the easiest way for him to get MVP. I think the easiest way would be for him to get injured, and not substantially injured, but miss a game or two. And then in those 2 games, Miami's offense go to shit. Tua not play good. The offense doesn't move. Miami lose one or both games, depending on if he's injured 1 game or 2 games, but lose the time that he's not on the field, and the offense just be very stagnant. And then him come back from said injury, and then the offense explode again, and him still put up 2,000 yards despite missing a game or 2, and then the 15, 16, 17 touchdowns. I think that would prove how valuable he is to that offense, and I think that would propel him to MVP status. Now, if he were to miss a game or 2 and the offense kept on clicking like nothing happened, obviously it would be the inverse effect, and it would very much so hurt his case for MVP. But ultimately, I think the way his season is going, it's a great season. Could put him as the Offensive Player of the Year, but I think it will simply have to solidify his position as MVP with the way it's going. And the last topic I'm going to cover is NFL fights. So we obviously saw the big fight break out between the Cowboys and Chargers for Monday Night Football. And the league has sent out a memo to all the owners, coaches, teams saying, just reiterating, like, we don't support fights. It's bad for the business. It's a bad look to the fans. It's not good for players. It's not good for coaches, refs, team personnel. It can cause unnecessary injury. And they've basically saying that, if you're involved in fights, you could be fined. You're subject to fines, suspensions, ejection. And they're saying teams are subject to fines, loss of draft picks. And they're also reiterating and what's the word I'm looking for? They're basically saying that you're subject to a greater reprimand, or a higher level of reprimand, meaning a bigger fine, or just a higher level of punishment if you are someone that runs into the fight later. So, like, say 2 or 3 players get into a scuffle, and then you run off the bench and you get in the middle of it and start shoving, throwing hands, whatever. They're saying you could be punished even more so, to a higher level than the people initially involved. And personally, I think that's a good decision. I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you got to stick up for your teammates. You got to get in there and help. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't stick up for your teammates, but this kind of reiterates what I said about DK Metcalf, and you're going to cause unnecessary penalties. That's going to hurt your team. Obviously, if it's a fight situation, it could be offsetting penalties, but if you're getting yourself ejected or suspended, you could potentially be hurting the team. And again, like I said, in the NFL said, it's a bad look. You're professional athletes. No one out there wants to hurt anybody else, and I say that I do think there have been some players at times that do want to hurt people, but you can be passionate about the game, you can be fired up, you can talk trash, you can be aggressive toward the other team, but do it on the playing field and within the confines of the game, and not unnecessarily after the play, fighting before the game, things like that. So I do think the NFL, I do not fault the NFL for sending out this memo about fights, and if they start handing out stricter punishments and start actually suspending players, heavily fining them, or even if there's a repeat offender team that gets in fights and they take a draft pick, I'm not opposed to that. Like, you have to protect your brand. You have to protect your product. That's your number one priority, and player safety is something you've pushed. If you're going to build this as could potentially injure players, and even more so coaches, refs, game day personnel, like people that are not in pads and helmets, then yeah, that's absolutely a safety issue. So I'll give the NFL props on that. Hopefully they stick to their word and we actually see some stricter punishments handed out to prove that they're like, hey, this is not just us saying this, like this is gonna happen if you push it. So we'll see how that goes. So those are my team picks for the week. We are 1-0 to start the week. Hopefully we have a good week. I do have Detroit in an upset of the week. I also have Denver picked as an upset. The rest of the games I mostly have favorites picked. We covered a few hot topics around the league, and unless you are a Denver fan, I hope your team wins this week, and I hope you enjoy some Sunday football. Have a good one.